Thank you, Ted.
Thank you.
Okay, the next bill we'll hear is Representative Laughlin's bill, 6937, and Harvey Waxman is also signed up to testify. He'll come forward, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen of the committee. It's always a pleasure to be here, especially today. It's my birthday, so hopefully we'll get a favorable result as a little birthday present for the study commission. The bill before you is a study commission to look at the way we consider property tax vis-a-vis revaluation. As I'm sure we all know, we frequently have, every 3 years, we have property reevaluated in the state of Rhode Island, town by town. And during the course of that reevaluation, some interesting things happen, some statistical anomalies that I think need to be structurally addressed. One of the things that typically will happen is a certain group of taxpayers will receive a large tax increase, while another group of taxpayers will receive an equally large tax decrease. Now, intuitively, you think, well, that might be okay. Maybe these are people that, need to have their taxes adjusted. But what we find when we look at the data a little bit more closely, and you'll see this in a moment, is that frequently it's the lower value properties, those with the folks that have the least ability to pay, that receive the largest tax increases. And conversely, it's commercial property and wealthy property owners that receive the largest tax decreases, all at a time when the town's budget goes up by a %. So it seems intuitively out of balance that we have a situation in which property taxes don't have any relevance to the actual needs of the community. This study commission, and I'd like to, with the committee's indulgence, modify the legislation to make it a joint committee. There are some folks in the Senate that would like to sit on this commission as well to look at this. The purpose of this commission is to take a look fundamentally at how we reevaluate property and how we treat property owners in our communities as we do these reevaluations, to see if in fact there is a structural problem in the way that we look at property, and to recommend some possible solutions and perhaps even draft legislation to amend those solutions. Unless you have any questions for me, I'm going to go ahead and introduce Dr. Harvey Waxman from North Kingstown. And Dr. Waxman is with a group called Right, which has got an idea on how to fix it. We're not going to go into that at all today. What I want to do today is to outline what I believe the problem is, and to see if you think that, in fact, there is enough of a reason for us to look into this further.
Right doesn't refer to your political philosophy.
No, not at all.
Does it?
Not at all. Dr. Waxman.
Thank you. Actually, it's kind of funny that you would say that, because once someone actually told me they were a little turned off by the fact that the name of my organization implied a certain political persuasion. They don't know me, obviously. Property taxes are, I don't think I have to convince anyone that the property tax is not popular. Any search of the internet will turn up the property tax as the most hated tax in America. It struck me that there is something strange about this, because a property tax is the only tax we pay which we spend directly on ourselves. When we send money to the state, no offense, or to the federal government, it goes away someplace else and it has to come back to us. But the property tax is a tax that we literally spend on ourselves in our own community for education, roads, fire, police protection, and yet we hate it more than any other tax. And I began thinking about this, and what I have noticed is that the property tax is like a tug-of-war between the budget and the taxpayer. And we assume that there is a direct link between the two. You tug on one and you affect the other. It appears that way, but it's not strictly the truth, because there is a third element in the room, and that is the distribution. How we distribute the tax will affect what different taxpayers are going to pay much more than the budget total number itself. Now, when it comes to the distribution, the Rhode Island Constitution, I think, should be lauded for stating that the burdens of the state ought to be fairly distributed among its citizens, and I couldn't agree more. To pay for local taxes, we distribute the burden by taxing property values. Now, that means that if you and I buy a house at the same time, and I spend twice as much for my house as you spend for your house, Logic and fairness would suggest, because of that, I might be wealthier than you, and perhaps I should pay more than you, and in fact, that's exactly what happens. If I buy a home at twice the value of your home, I will pay twice what you pay. But then a few years go by, and as a few years go by, we do something called a revaluation. So that now, if your house happens to be in a popular neighborhood, you, who are the same person that you were when you bought your house, and I, who am the same person I was, you may find that you're paying more than I am now to live in the same community and receiving the same services. In fact, after some revaluations, you may find that your taxes went up and mine went down. It began to puzzle me. Revaluation results in a break of the link between what we pay in the budget, and this cycle every 3 years takes over. This is what determines what we pay in taxes, much more than the dollar amount of a tax levy. Every revaluation has certain similarities, and I'm going to focus a little bit on my hometown, which is North Kingstown, located pretty much in the middle of the state and has a pretty even demographic. It's got some nice neighborhoods, a lot of shoreline, wealthy homes, some industry, blue-collar areas. I think it's a good sample of what the state is like. A typical revaluation results in about 2 out of 3 taxpayers getting increases and 1 out of 3 taxpayers getting decreases. That's a 2-to-1 ratio. So for every 8 taxpayers that see their taxes go up, 4 will see their taxes go down. In North Kingstown, after the revaluation in 2003, the people who paid more money in 2004 paid an additional $4.3 million, an average of a 22% increase. The tax levy that year in 2004 increased $1.8 million, or 3.8%. Now, if the people who paid increases paid $4.3 million and the town only needed $1.8 million, where did their $2.5 million go? We have honest administrators in North Kingstown. They didn't take it. That money was used to compensate for the reductions that were given to the 1 out of 3 taxpayers who got reductions. It's as if money were literally taken from one group of citizens and given to another, not because one deserved more or less, simply because the market decided that the property of those people went up far more than the other individuals who saw their taxes drop. Who are they? This is just a graph that's going to illustrate what I just showed you. A $48.6 million tax levy, $1.8 million increase, 3.8%. The tax levy dropped dramatically from $23.31 to $14.38 after the revaluation. Let's take a look at what happened to the taxpayers. First, we'll look at new taxpayers. These are people who bought a home and they didn't pay a tax on that house the previous year, so there was no change in the tax. People who built a home that wasn't there the year before. The new taxpayers, like all taxpayers, pay based on the value times the tax rate. They paid $5 million. That means that $43.6 million had to be raised from the rest of the people. Now, the rest of the owners, these aren't just homeowners, by the way, these are all owners, will be arranged according to their property values. On the left side, you'll see the most modest properties, from $50,000 to $100,000 to anything over $5 million on the right-hand side. The people who own property valued between $50,000 and $100,000 saw their taxes go up an average of 13%, nearly 4 times the increase in the tax levy, and they contributed $2.5 million to that $43.6 million figure. The next group is a large group. These are properties between $1 and $200,000. They make up about 50% of the property owners. Their taxes went up 7%, almost twice the tax levy. They contributed $17.2 million. The next group, about 27%, own more expensive homes now. They're in the $200,000 to $500,000 range. Their tax bills didn't change almost at all, 1.5% increase. The next 3 groups altogether make up about 5 or 6% of all properties. and they are the expensive ones, between 500 and a million, between 1 and 5 million, and anything over 5 million. All of them got decreases in their tax bills, all of them. Home Depot is in that last category. They got a 24% decrease in their tax bill. Incidentally, their profits rose 17% for the same year. So here we are. We've distributed the burden. We've raised our $43.6 million. Our resources, our expenses are funded, but 70% of the taxpayers are footing the bill, and it's the group, arguably, that can least afford it. And what is our solution? Our solution is always the same. Attack the budget. Those bad school teachers, the firefighters, the police. Now, I'm not here to defend wasteful budgets. I don't like to waste money. I won't talk about my heritage, but I don't like to waste money. No one wants to waste money. I think we all want to feel that our money is being well spent. So I'm not here to defend the budget. I'm here only to tell you that I believe that our emphasis on controlling the budget to bring relief to taxpayers is a waste. Let's assume that we are successful in wiping out the entire budget increase, that 3.8% on the left-hand side. Let's just wipe it out. Not easy to do in real life, but with a computer I just push a button. It's now gone. Now the number on the upper left-hand side, that was the original $48.6 million. That's now $46.8 million. That's back to the 2003 level. With a lower requirement to raise from the taxpayer, we can lower the tax rate even more. Now it's $13.87. That's a heck of a jump. Down, that's terrific. So that $5 million from the new homeowners can now be only 4.8, and the existing homeowners, instead of paying 43.6, only have to pay 42. Let's distribute the burden in the way we traditionally do it, the way we've been doing it. Actually, the first property tax, first ad valorem property tax record was found at 5000 BC recently. So we've been doing this for a long time. A long time. That's how we fund local government. So let's do it. Let's reduce the taxes for everybody. Our 70% get a tax break. They're still spending considerably more money than they spent the year before, and yet the community doesn't need an extra dime. Where is their money going if they're spending more? Well, the group that got that little tiny increase, they now get a decrease. And the rest, the ones who got already decreases, get simply deeper cuts. It's a windfall for them, and they're not going to complain at all. Mission accomplished? I don't think so. I don't think we've accomplished the mission at all. This is not the way we can fix the real problem that taxpayers are feeling. Not that we shouldn't cut budgets. We need to do that. But if we don't at the same time rethink the way we distribute the burden, we can never solve this problem. Let me just take a minute and introduce you to Larry Berry, a neighbor of mine who gave me permission to use his name and his house. He lives in a 700-square-foot bungalow since 1957. He was foolish enough to buy it on the water where he could see Quonset, where he worked. In 2000, Mr. Berry paid $3,757 in taxes for his community. The house was assessed at $152,400. In 2000 was the first year that North Kingstown had a revalue under the new legislation requiring triannual revaluations. And his property now this is popular stuff. It is now valued at $370,500. So Mr. Berry, who's been, by the way, single his whole life, never sent a child to school in the public school system, not a living relative in the world, just wants to live in his house, now has to come up with $8,636 in 2003 for the same house, for essentially the same services. And now in 2003, we revalue again, because this is supposed to make things fair. So Mr. Berry's house is now revalued at $717,000. I'm not arguing with revaluations. He can get $717,000 for that house because that's what people are willing to pay. And people who are willing to pay it should pay taxes on it, but not Mr. Berry. Mr. Berry shouldn't be forced to pay taxes on what his neighbors can afford. But that's what we do using our current system. So in 2004, his tax bill is now $10,315, which is more than he paid for his house, but it's not even important. The important thing is the unfairness. How unfair is it? Let's go up the road a little bit. This is a new development, Wickford Point. This is a piece of property that was four times the size of Mr. Berry's house. It's 2,700 square feet, and in 2000 it was valued at $280,700. It's not right on the water. And the owner paid a proportionate tax, $6,919. It was revalued, just like Mr. Berry's was in 2000, and the value went up about $100,000. And this gentleman's tax bill in 2003 was $8,860, almost the same as Mr. Berry's. In 2004, it was revalued again. It went up another $100,000. And his tax bill now with that new tax rate fell back to what it was in the year 2000. This is what we call fair distribution of the burden by our Constitution. I don't think so. There is nothing fair about distributing the burden in this manner. During these 4 years, North Kingstown complied with the requirement that the state places on a 5.5% tax cap. Tax levy can't go up without special permission, 5.5%. North Kingstown actually did better than that. It averaged better than that. Mr. Berry contributed to that tax levy at the rate of 36% a year. His taxes increased 36% per year to receive the same services that this gentleman received with a 1.4% increase in his tax bill. I don't understand how anybody can look at these figures and not question that what we are doing is simply unfair to taxpayers. The use of market values to fund the revenue, which I'm not trying to affect the revenue. If we raise the same $43.6 million, we can, as long as we do that, we've satisfied the requirement, but we can do it better. So, in summary, we have a major problem. It's clear. People are, by the way, this morning I heard on the radio that this is the anniversary of, I think it was either 20 or 25 years ago, where there was a revolt in Providence where everybody was yelling, we won't pay any more taxes, and I think Mayor Cianci raised the tax rate $16 a thousand that year. I just heard it and I tried to go find the details, but I couldn't. Here we are later, 20 or 25 years later, and we're doing the same thing. We cannot fix this problem the way we're doing it because we only focus on the total tax levy, and the problem persists. And it will stay here until we address the distribution problem which we've been using. Thank you very much.
Are there any questions of the committee?
That's the same thing. Any questions?
I didn't mean to take your job from you.
Okay.
You're doing a great job.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a comment. I, for one, have always had a disquiet about the way that we did do property taxes, but never until today did I hear it so eloquently professed as you did, Dr. Waxman. So I thank you very much for it, and I do believe I understand it far more now than I did 20 minutes ago. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
I've read your pieces on several occasions, Doctor, and also heard you speak before. You do make a very eloquent argument. Obviously, this is a question about whether we should look at how property taxes, we seek to focus on property taxes. I'm a member of a committee right now with Representative Savage that's looking at how property taxes fund education in this state, and we're overwhelmed with the information. I can tell you that, and I think you're aware of the fact, that some of the issues you've brought up have been attempted to be addressed in other states. I know that California did it in 1978. I know that Oregon has done it. And one of the things that comes back is the difficulties about the value of somebody's property. The fact of the matter is, whether that gentleman is single and like to look at Quonset, God only gave us so much waterfront, and the property is moving up. We know that. And in my case in South Kingston, I'm a resident of South Kingston, folks who live in the neighborhoods like Green Hill and Matunic are paying a very high tax load because of the value of their property. It isn't that, it's the fact that they bought houses that probably, when I bought mine in 1978, I might have paid $80,000, and somebody over in Green Hill bought one for $80,000. Their house today is worth a heck of a lot more than mine, and it is an asset. If it is something, I know that one of the difficulties if this commission is formed is how you come up with the problem of the significant benefits to long-term property owners. That's a fact of the matter is there have been all kinds of problems in California and Oregon in those situations, especially where there is distribution of farmland, where a farmer owns a large amount of property, and if he continues to sell it or continues to farm or sells it to remain on a farm, we have laws to protect those people in the state, they're fine. If in turn he turns around and sells the property for house lots, the property value increases multifold. And, you know, we have, I don't know what North Kingston's current tax break is in terms of residential vis-a-vis industrial and commercial property. There's no classification system in North Kingston. And there is one in several of our communities in the state. Providence has a classification system so that a Home Depot, you know, would pay more than they are paying. The same thing exists all over our state, especially in suburban areas. I know that the tax per thousand has driven down the prices, the tax levy and commercial and industrial property in South Kingston. I don't know about North Kingston because I don't know how you split it. In South Kingston, it's only commercial and industrial is only like 12% of it's 88% residential, so consequently it's driven by the cost of the homes and cost of residence. It's a tough question, and I'll tell you, I agree with Representative Mumford. You have obviously spent a lot of time on this particular area. I don't know, however, where the fair solutions remain. So I personally would, a joint committee to look at this. I don't want to be on it because those folks are going to really wind up in a lot of hand-wrenching and probably a lot of difficulties trying to find and seek solutions. Because from what I've seen in other states, they don't usually come up with solutions that will meet your requirements and demands. That's all. I'll be happy to support. I don't care about wonderful ideas, John.
I was told not to make any suggestions about solutions, so I'm not going to, but I will comment about California and Massachusetts, incidentally, and where I have a serious problem with their solutions, and that is that they have placed an arbitrary number on the limit to the valuation. In California, you cannot raise the value of property more than 2%, and you can't charge more than $10 a thousand. Now, that's all well and good if inflation is 2 or 3%, but when inflation is 15 or 20%, we put communities in jeopardy because they simply can't raise the money from property taxes. So I think it is very unfair. I'm not a fan of Proposition 13.
But
we have
how about Florida and the homestead on their homestead?
I have an answer to that, but I swore I wouldn't talk about it. However, let me respond to that, though. Homestead exemptions, as a principle, I'm against them, even though I am now considered elderly. An elderly homestead exemption, because of the fact that I'm elderly, is an attempt for a community to be compassionate and sensitive to the people working within a flawed framework. The reason we need these exemptions is because we're creating so much injustice by the method by which we assess taxes. If we could change that, let's eliminate the need for the exemptions. If you break your leg and you take aspirin for a headache, the headache may go away a little bit, but you haven't fixed the problem. And an exemption is treating the symptom of a problem, and we are not looking at the source of the trouble, and that is a system which has its roots in ancient history long before the Industrial Revolution. Property value prior to the Industrial Revolution was determined by the income that property produced. It was, in fact, an income tax in a very primitive, basic way. Today, that's gone. We have given over what we pay as citizens as a shared responsibility to the cost of government to the marketplace. The marketplace decides what we pay. It's the only tax we pay according to what somebody else can afford. So
But I think, though, Representative Shanley, and I thank you very much for your point, what you did is you crystallized, and very eloquently, the need for the study commission. The need to take a look at what's been done in other states, to take a look fundamentally at the problem, and to get at the underlying mechanisms that cause the problem. You're right, it's going to be a daunting task.
Representative Love, I don't have a problem with the study commission. The study commissions are wonderful. From what I've read on this particular issue, the study commissions that have been in other states have largely come back with proposals that, if they don't work, maybe Rhode Island might get lucky. I don't know, but I do have a kind of a. It's not a prejudice. I'd love to see this. I would love to see a system whereby people would have in terms of increases, they would be fair. It is not a fair system the way we do it on this idea that the legislature came up with the reevaluation every 3 years is costing the communities, especially communities like yours and mine, the smaller ones, costing them an inordinate amount of money. It was designed primarily to eliminate some of the doctor's problems of these long-term residents who weren't paying any taxes, living in high-valued homes, weren't paying much because their tax hadn't been, their property hadn't been reevaluated. So we changed that. I don't know whether we did all. There are people that say we went too far, and it should be 5 years, not every 3. I see your head bobbing around, Doctor. There, I don't know
because
it used to be once every 10 years. That certainly doesn't work.
It used to be every 15. There's an old story about the frog in the water. If you put the frog in water when it's cold and you turn the heat up a little bit, he doesn't notice it, but he's still boiling at the end. It's very, very much the same. If the shock comes every 10 years or it creeps up on you a little bit, it's still a shock. The idea is that we are trying desperately to fix a system which is inherently unfixable. We insist on using the marketplace to determine what we're paying for taxes. And as long as we do that, we will always end up with a faulty system. We have refused to look at the fundamental problem, and that is dependency on the marketplace to decide who pays what. I see absolutely no justification for anybody paying a 15, 20, 30, 100% increase in taxes, and Home Depot or Walmart or somebody else getting a 25% decrease. And you can do that every 5 years or every 5 minutes. The results are the same. It's the marketplace that's making the decision, and it shouldn't be. It's the needs of the community shared fairly among its taxpayers, the way our Constitution asks us to do.
I do have one slight problem with the proposal in the construction of this body being 7 members, no more than 4 from the same party. If your party ever gets to 42% of the legislature, maybe we'd allow that. But
don't look at me. I don't.
Is that an offer to become a Republican? Because I think we have room for you. I'll have to check with the minority leader.
I don't know if I'm ready to climb that. Never mind to go over it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Doctor and Representative, for an excellent presentation. But a couple of times you've referred to the property tax escalating for homeowners and going down for a Home Depot. And I know, like within my own community, there is a 2-tiered tax rate, one for commercial property and property owners and one for the homeowners. And the commercial property owners have always said that they have been greatly overtaxed because they are being taxed on the fact that they have a business on the property, and we're talking about a property value tax. And their insistence is that they are always already paying business taxes, and in all fairness, that they should be paying a lesser tax because it's a property value tax and not a business tax. Would that also, those types of concerns and questions would also be part of it?
Absolutely, absolutely. In fact, we would reach out to the business community, both in the city of Providence and some of the urban areas as well as the suburban areas, to get that sort of feedback and to provide some empirical meat to the bones so that we can understand in black and white what the tax consequences are and how these actually would work with some of the various proposals to level this playing field.
And actually, the 2-tiered tax has only come about because of the almost continuous reevaluations and has become a problem which prior to that it was not. So I'm would encourage the formation of a commission. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen, very much.
Thank you.
Next, Representative Rumford has two bills, 6878 and 6785.